Okay, I wanted to make a video that I'd be able to nail something to the wall definitive and to help those to make up their mind whether they're thinking about purchasing the Fuji X-T1 or the X-T10. While I may be personally guilty of repeating myself from time to time in the video, I did not want to make a repetitious video like what already exists on YouTube, and this will not be that video. I will mention some key important factors in this video that you will not find mentioned over on Diaper and Pee Review or anywhere else on YouTube as far as some of the nagging differences that exist between the Fuji X-T1 or X-T10. Specifically, of course, you can go anywhere and look up the differences between the Fuji X-T1 or the X-T10, but there are some things, shall we say, that will rub the photographer's fur the wrong way, and I don't just mean me specifically. Now, it is the case that every camera needs to be gotten used to, and whether it's even the Fuji X-T1 or the X-T10, they both have their nagging differences, and one can state rationally that, well, you need to spend more time with the camera. But there are always those instances where ergonomics and placements of particular dials and buttons or the layout or the structure of the camera is such that no matter how much time you spend with it, it will be, I don't know how to put this, a pain in the crotch. Rub your fur the wrong way. So I wanted to make a video and go over the specific empirical differences between the two, and also some of the specific empirical differences that are not mentioned on other websites that pertain to the differences between the Fuji X-T1. Now, the X-T1 and X-T10 both have their own nagging differences, and they both have some pluses over the other one. So both fail in certain areas and both excel in certain areas. Obviously so, since the X-T1 came out after the X-T1, Fuji certainly did listen to a few things from Fuji users and improved upon a couple little things. But it is also the case that the more expensive X-T1 has some pluses, so let's go over them right now. Without getting into specifics and comparing and contrasting back and forth, which you can find anywhere on the web, let's go over some of these nagging differences. Now, the X-T10 has, let me flip both around here for you. The X-T10 does have, which the X-T1 does not have, clickable front and rear command dials. Now you see the rear command dial or the main command dial here, and also on the front on the Fuji X-T1 and on the X-T10. This is clickable on the Fuji X-T1, on the Fuji X-T10, where it is not so the case with the Fuji X-T1. Now, why is that really important? What difference does it make? Well, this is where focus peaking occurs. So now if you're a person that is going to do a lot of manual focusing or use a Metabones adapter, that is a bit of a problem. Now, I cannot imagine this being really any different whether you have fat fingers or skinny fingers, but as is the case, focus peaking, since there is not a clickable command dial on the Fuji X-T1, has been relegated to this tiny button right here. Let me focus in for you on the focus assist button right here. When you're actually shooting, even if you have small fingers, you have to sometimes fumble for it. Now, I have been using the Fuji X-T1 for plenty long enough to be able to know exactly where it's at, muscle memory, but it still is a nuisance when I naturally have my thumb here, my Fuji X-T10. The clickable rear command dial for doing focus peaking is right there. I never have to hunt and peck for it. Now, hunt and peck for it is a bit of an exaggeration, but there is a delay in finding it. Now, the current sale prices between the Fuji X-T1 and X-T10 is $800 and $1,000 relatively. So right now, at this particular window of time, you're looking at a $200 difference between the two. Now, what are some of the other nagging differences where one excels and the other doesn't, and vice versa? Now, your focus command dial selector switch on the front here, and this is something I've noticed that nobody else has mentioned, between single, continuous, and manual here on the X-T1 and here on the here on the X-T10 and here on the X-T1. This is plastic on the X-T10, and I don't know if this is I don't think it's magnesium. It has to be CNC machined. It's probably cast aluminum, but this one is actually metal on the X-T1. Now, this actually sees a lot of action for me, and it probably does for you, depending on what sort of shooter you are. Some people may leave this in single mode all the time, or might leave it in continuous mode all the time, or maybe even manual mode all the time. But that's something that does get a lot of action, and if you got gorilla hands, it might be the case you might actually break that on the Fuji X-T10. So that is a bit of a nagging issue for me. But down the road we'll see whether or not anybody breaks one of those. The Fuji X-T10 hasn't been out for that long, so that's going to take some time, certainly so, a year or two, and the Fuji X-T10 has not been on the block, shall we say, for that long for anybody to experience that yet that I know of. One of the advantages of the Fuji X-T1 is a removable eyepiece. Sometimes they get lost, obviously, so you might think that it is an advantage of the X-T10 here that the eyepiece does not readily pop off like it does on the X-T1. But it is also the case that stray light entering in from the sides, especially if you're wearing glasses where your eyeball's further away from the eyepiece, poses an issue, and that it occludes a perfect, nice, dark view. And one of the advantages of the Fuji X-T1 is that you have the ability of adding the new longer eyepiece to block out stray light. I'll be doing a review on that later this week, so this is easily removed. You can put on the longer eyepiece. One of the nagging features of the X-T10, and that's just the nature of the beast since it's the lesser expensive of the two. The X-T10 has no manual focus split screen or dual mode. Now you might think, well, how important is that? Well, I don't know, if you're going to be using all autofocus Fuji lenses, you may not really care, but if you're going to be using a portrait lens and you need to check your focus peaking, that split screen and that larger viewfinder is really actually very nice. That does not exist on the X-T10. One thing that nags me, and I've heard other people mention it on the X-T10 versus the X-T1, is the manual switch between auto mode. There's a little switch right here. You can take it out of auto mode, and then from there you can go into shutter priority or aperture priority or manual mode. That is, at the very minimum, illogical and certainly so counterintuitive. Maybe it is because I've been shooting for so long and I'm used to older manual style cameras, and the Fujis, the X-T10s and the X-T1s are designed to be manual experience cameras, and they certainly don't have the two additional knobs, that being the ISO and the metering sub-command dial that the X-T1 has, but that counterintuitive switch is problematic, and I've heard more than a few people complain and piss and moan about that one, and I will myself count myself as one of those who pisses and moans about it as well. Now, I have gotten used to it, but it is still nagging and counterintuitive. It's kind of like the giant wart on the face of the gorgeous supermodel. All things being equal, if the Fuji X-T1 were perfect, it's certainly not a beauty mark, but definitely so a warty speed bump on the face of beauty on an otherwise very excellent camera. And it is counterintuitive, and Fuji should have definitely came up with an alternative to that particular switch. Now, the X-T1 has 6 programmable function buttons, whereas the X-T10 has 7. Further still, the X-T1 has a correctly placed front function button, as is the case when you're holding your camera. Your middle finger or this finger is apt, typically my middle finger is apt to actually press this, as is typical for Canon users and Nikon users, to use a preview button or the function button right here, and there is one placed here on the X-T1 that is not present on the X-T10, and that is extremely handy. And the best thing to do with that, of course, is to place for your most useful function there. Now, the 6 function buttons that exist on the Fuji X-T1 and the 7 on the X-T10. On the X-T1 we have here function button right here, which I have currently set to white balance. That's number 2. And we have 3, 4, 5, 6. So these 4, same on the Fuji. Let me do a little bit of focusing. These 4, the same as on the Fuji X-T10. 5, this function button. Currently set at Wi-Fi default, but I have it set for white balance. I'm not really interested in Wi-Fi mode that much. And number 6, a very handy place function button right on the front of the Fuji X-T1. Now, looking at the Fuji X-T10, we have the exact same 4 buttons back here around the menu. Select OK button. This function button, that's 5. We have the clickable front or sub command dial right there to press in. That's 6, and number 7 you can change the video record button as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 6 on the Fuji X-T1. Now the X-T10 has no ISO dial. Here's the ISO dial on back into focus there. ISO dial, excuse me, I'm using a manual focus lens to film this video. The ISO dial on the Fuji X-T1, so the X-T10 has no ISO dial. The X-T1 also has no exposure mode / metering sub command dial underneath the shutter like we have here on the Fuji X-T1. Those are relegated to pressing your function buttons to change those, which is actually very handy. I mean, some people actually really enjoy the manual experience in the Fuji X-T1 over the X-T10. I frankly don't give a damn. Now, as far as the pure retro aesthetics, especially in this age of retro hippiedom where everything old is new again, people love it because it looks retro, but as far as it being ergonomically superior, I cannot actually say that having my ISO dial and my exposure mode, my metering subcommand dial on the X-T1 is somehow awesome versus that of the X-T10. They're just different, and there are arguments for both, and empirically and objectively so, there's a real no great difference between the two. Technically so, actually having the ISO and the metering set to reprogram via one of the function buttons on the X-T10 is actually a little bit faster. The X-T10 has no weather sealing, which doesn't really matter a damn because neither one of these cameras is sealed against pervasive weather. The X-T1 has a much larger buffer. X-T10 can capture up to 8 JPEGs at 8 frames per second versus the X-T1's 47 JPEGs at the same rate, all things being equal, like the card and such. The X-T10 has no possibility for a vertical grip like I have here currently on the X-T1. Some people that doesn't matter. I myself am a total vertical grip slut, and I absolutely love the vertical grip. It is harder to swap SD cards. You actually have SD card here on the side on the X-T1 versus on the bottom, and it's actually right at the same level as the battery, and there have been a lot of people bitch and moan about that, and I will be one also to bitch and moan about that because it's perfectly flush right there. You actually have to depress the battery down a little bit while depressing the SD card to pull it out, and if you have no fingernails, it is something to bitch and moan about. So I can't agree with most everybody on that fact, but live with it. It's no great big deal. There's no PC sync connection on the front of the X-T10 like there is right here on the X-T1. Now, if you're not a strobist or a portrait photographer, then you might not give a damn. The Fuji X-T10 has lower resolution LCD screen, no big deal, 120,000 pixels versus 1,040,000 on the X-T1. One big deal, especially if you're a glasses wearer, is that the Viewfinder is a 0.62 magnification on the X-T10, and on the it is 0.77 on the X-T1. So 0.62 magnification and 0.77 magnification on the X-T1. The X-T10 has the better. What is it better at than the Fuji X-T1? Well, it's lighter. Same sensor as CPU. Well, it's not better, but it's the same. So it's smaller. It has a threaded shutter release. That's extremely nice. Pop-up flash. That's also really nice. Magnesium top and bottom is not a full magnesium chassis. That doesn't really matter for a damn. The chassis on the X-T1 is all magnesium, but unless you plan on hammering nails with either one of these cameras, I frankly don't think it matters one damn. I was trying to think of something else that was different between the two, but I think that was actually the summation of it. Yeah, excuse me for my temporary brain loss right there. But yeah, that was the entire list. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this video, drop me a buck or two. I just wanted to give you some key rundowns as the differences that distinguish these two. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye.